I actually really like that question. It really resonates with me because my approach has always been to try to have a plan. I think, unfortunately, as CX professionals, the quite often the tasks can be quite superficial or perceived as fluffy, right? So if you don't have an anchor to that plan, if you don't have a solid structure and strategic approach to your plan as a CX leader, you can really sort of fall into that fluffy perspective. So for me, the first 100 days or the 36 to 90-day plan is sort of broken down in always starting with a current state assessment. I've said this time and time again throughout my career. I don't believe in a generic approach to anything. So, as a consultant, one of the big requests I used to get all the time, especially, being in the Caribbean, which is seen as very service oriented, we used to get requests all the time, come and train our staff, do some customer service training. And people always used to be taken aback when I'm saying, well, no, I don't believe in a generic approach to customer service training, much as I don't believe in a generic approach to marketing or product positioning. So I think for me, it really has to start with a strong and structured current state assessment. Get to understand the business, understand the challenges and how you can flip those challenges into opportunities. And of course, as equal importance is get to know the key players and the key stakeholders in the business. Understand who are going to be your allies, who's going to be a little bit more challenging to overcome, who you're going to be able to lean on to make change in the business. Because I think, again, this is something I've said quite often. As a CX practitioner, you're quite almost always the de facto change agent in the business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important that you sort of start with a great, thorough understanding from the ground up.
So I feel like, so I just made the jump to Sin 7 a couple months ago. So I really kind of just made it out of my first 100 days.
Mhm.
And I know as I was preparing, I had all of these spreadsheets and plans and everything. And I looked back at that actually recently, and most of it I've done, but it's interesting how much you learn just by doing the job. So I guess as far as kind of how I spent my first 100 days, I definitely spend time understanding the existing processes, the customer pain points, team dynamics, kind of the basics of that. I met with key customers to get their feedback firsthand and analyze the data of kind of how our customers are doing. I think that's a big thing, is really understanding where the team is at, where the customers are at. So any information around customer journeys and segmentation, if that's depending on the maturity of the team, if that exists, or if that's something that you're going to be creating. Understanding the metrics of the business. So not just the CS metrics, but how is the overall business doing? I spent a lot of time with different cross-functional leaders trying to kind of understand what their goals were, how they measured success, because it's really important. In CS, I feel like you're kind of at the center of everything. So you're working closely with product and sales and finance and marketing and everyone. And so I think it's really important to understand kind of their goals, understand how kind of you're best going to work together. Because at the end of the day, my success with my team and with our customers is so dependent on the success of these other teams. And so the more that we can understand that and leverage each other, the better. I'd say the most important thing, though, really is, for me, was getting to know my team. So one thing that I did was I had individual time with every single person that was in my org. So spending 60 to 90 minutes with them individually to really kind of understand what their short and long-term goals were, what they like most about their job, what they don't, what their strengths are, areas that they're looking to improve, things like that. That really helped me from the beginning. That way, then when I was looking at our org chart and understanding kind of who was on my team and kind of who the key players were and everything, I was also able to quickly identify people that I knew could grow into different specialized roles. That was really important because our team, much of the team kind of had very similar roles and they were doing very similar things. And what I found was that there were some really special people on our team that had really diverse skill sets that we really weren't tapping into. And so this allowed me to quickly be able to level up some of my team members and kind of leverage them in different ways, get them involved in different projects. I think when you're a leader, it's less just about kind of what lives in your own brain and what you can do, and really how can you tap into your team? How can you get them excited about where you're going and ask them the questions of, hey, what do you think I should be focused on? Where should we be going as a team? I got incredible ideas and feedback from my team, and so that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, definitely. So the way that I would break this up is if we were thinking of that first 100 days, I like to typically break that up into 3 segments or 3 phases, 0 to 30. So the first 30 days, the next 30 days, so 30 to 60 days, and then 60 to 90, or I guess you could say 60 to 100 days even. So when we talk about that first phase, the first 0 to 30 days, what you really want to do is to be a sponge. You want to listen, understand, analyze, process information. So that's kind of the main thing you want to be doing the first 30 days, really processing information, listening, right? So this would entail things like getting to meet with your management, your, other peer CS leaders, people, who are essentially running the CS org, other department heads, folks on the team, CSMs, right? And get an honest understanding as far as you can get in terms of what's working well so far, as we, run our CS org, what's not working well, where are your pain points, where could you use help, and really just get everybody's perspectives, right? To get that full 360 view. And then even ask some softer questions, right? How do you find meaning in your work? And then, of course, an important one, how do you align yourself to the company's top line and outcomes? And I think this is really something important to think about because it's very easy, even for leaders, to get so lost in the weeds in the day to day that we're not really thinking about how do I align myself or how am I aligning myself and my team to the company's OKRs? Because if you're unable to do that, then perhaps we've lost our way a little bit, right? We always need to be in a position to back up our value to the company. And maybe this is thinking a little bit pessimistically, not that we'd always be in that kind of situation, but I think it's really important to be able to back the value that you're providing to the company and really align yourself, what you're doing, the impact you're driving, however small it is, to company level goals. So I think that's a good question to ask. And then it's also a really good opportunity within those first 30 days to listen to your customers, right? Understand how they're getting value from the product today. What are their pain points? What are they thinking about what works well with the product? How have they been able to reach their goals with your product, right? Are they blocked in any way? What are some obstacles, right? What could we be doing better to help you reach your goals with the product? And then kind of the frank question of, do you see this partnership continuing the long term? I mean, it's a difficult, loaded question to ask sometimes, but definitely a good question to ask. And you always have the excuse of, hey, I'm new here and I'm figuring things out, to, I guess, ask this question very candidly, but I think that's something good to ask. So I'll pause there. I know this is just the first 30 days, but I'll pause there. Hopefully that's clicking so far.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And I'd love to hear, about the next, 60 to 90 and 30 to 60. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So getting to the next 30 days, right? The 30 to 60 days phase that we had just talked about. In the first 30 days, we were listening, processing information, kind of sifting through that information, and perhaps, themes were surfacing, right? Themes would be surfacing for us. And then, so 30 to 60 days is where we want to plan. We want to actually continue to process this information that we've got and then see what we can do towards, do we have strong customer segmentation, right? Because especially very small startups or very small companies that you're a part of may not have very defined customer segmentation. And so that's usually fine in the initial days because the company is still figuring out what customer segmentation looks like, but perhaps you have some data and your external perspective coming in afresh as to figure out what that customer segmentation looks like to really help streamline our efforts in CS, right? Spend time kind of disseminating or distributing your customers into segments based on some of the perhaps top use cases that you're seeing come up from the customers that you've spoken to, or perhaps it's a very simplistic distribution in terms of the contract value, the ARR, right? So thinking through customer segmentation if it doesn't already exist, or maybe thinking through how to examine, how to enhance the customer segmentation, right? Maybe the company has a very simplistic definition that doesn't quite account for some deeper needs that your customers are sharing with you. So maybe customer segmentation is not just about contract value or how much they're spending with you, but also the core use case they're looking to drive with your product. And so maybe you add that dimension into it to really help CS add value with the time that they're spending with their customers, right? And so customer segmentation is something to think through. And then if onboarding is within the purview of customer success, which it sometimes is in smaller companies, thinking about how can we make the onboarding process more efficient so as to perhaps nip in the bud some of the leading indicators that customers are alluding to post onboarding, right? Some of the pain points that they've brought up, maybe those can be alleviated by addressing steps in the onboarding process. And then post onboarding nurture. How are we engaging with our customers post onboarding to ensure that within those first few days of them using the product that they're able to get to that first value very quickly, right? Because if they're not seeing that first value, then that's definitely a leading indicator towards churn in the long term. And so perhaps there's a little bit of automation that can go into it too, especially if you have lots and lots of customers per CSM, then maybe there's some product usage indicators or some automated emails that can go out. So that's something to think about. And then renewals, expansions, automation around that, making it easy for CSMs to tackle those, right? Tag team with the sales team and tackle those. And then other interlock, right? Not just interlock with sales, but how does CS work with product, marketing, engineering, ops, finance? Because you've, in the first 30 days, you've spoken to other department heads. So perhaps there's ways that we can help each other as we work towards the same common goals as a company, right? And then health scoring for customers, team KPIs, right? To align to the company's top line if those aren't well defined. Capacity planning, right? And then if, again, you're at a super small company and you don't really have the tools for automation, that's fine. You don't have to over optimize right away, but maybe you have a ton of Google Sheets and you're like, hey, I think it's time for us to get a CRM of sorts or get a customer success source of truth of some sort, right? So that's something to consider. So that would be the next 30 to 60 days of planning. And I know that was quite a bit. So I'll pause right there before I get to the last 60
Oh,
to
keep rolling. You're killing it. I love this. This is a very detailed answer. I feel like I could go start right now somewhere.
Thank you. Yeah, I know I essentially went very, very into detail
It's
here,
great.
but I am glad that it's resonating. So getting to that last 60 to 90 or the last 60 to 100, it's all about executing. So, the fun part where you've got all this information that you've processed and you've thought through, and you are essentially prioritizing and executing on that based on what's most important for the company. So, if customer segmentation came up as a big thing, you're working on that. And then if post onboarding nurture was a big thing, you're working on that. If automation around renewals and expansions was another big thing, you're working on that. So you're kind of arranging or prioritizing all of the things that have been surfaced through all of the people that you've spoken to, all of the customers you've spoken to prioritize and work through in such a way that you are able to drive towards tangible outcomes within even a relative short term. So yeah, just setting that plan into motion, executing is what you would start off doing in the 60 to 90 or 60 to 100 phase. So lots of info there. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. So I think I made this mistake, so I'm guilty of making this mistake. So again, I failed forward. I failed and I've learned lots of things. I think the first thing you need to do is just basically listen. Be a listener. Don't try to go in and fix it. That's one of my problems myself when I was younger. I see something, I got to fix it. Time will come to fix things. I think the first 100 days is really absorb, identify, find out, understanding what everything is going on, right? And then once you understand it, build this, what I call a journey board. Like, where do I want to go? What step do I need to take? Then I like to create, I would recommend to create a compelling vision that actually aligns with the customer, with your organization's mission. So at Etech, we're a servant-led company. That means serving others first. So everything you do has to actually tie into that mission statement and vision. And then people talk about SMART goals. I'm a big believer in SMART goals, but I take mine a little bit quicker. I say, three. Pick three things, because when you have data, you can do a roadmap for millions of things. Let's pick three and let's try to achieve those small wins first. And if you have a talented CX and CS team that shares your passion, that's awesome. If you don't have one, you need to create one. And remember, just because they don't know anything doesn't mean they can't learn. Most of the people under me started as agents, and my director today, my SVP, both started as agents, and they're masters of the domain now because they learn. But if you had a team already, the first thing I would be expecting is they should have the tools they need to actually do their job, right? And again, go with the quick wins. I'm a big believer. Just show little progress, right? I'm getting better here, getting better. The last and probably the most successful thing any CS executive or actually person in the world, because I think you need to communicate. I think communication is probably one of the biggest areas of opportunity across the world. The more you share, the more you support, and the more you gather, the easier it is to get to your long-term initiatives, because you're not supposed to know all the answers. You're supposed to communicate and take information from others to make you successful. Hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. That's a very good question. And so for any customer success leader, right, when you come into a new organization, it's probably either you're the first hire, because here's what I've seen, right? I had a VP or leader of customer success could mean really very different things depending on the size or maturity of the company that you're joining. For others, like I said, it could be you're the first hire, so you need to build and start the team from scratch. And in other organizations, that means that you are inheriting a team that already exists, that has existing processes, tools in place. And so really specifically, that could mean a lot of things differently. And I've worked at 4 different startups in the past 8 years. And it's either I'm the first one building the CS team, or I even inherited a team. But fundamentally, I really believe that it doesn't change much what you do on a day-to-day, or at least in the first 30, 60, 90 days. Because at the essence of it, what you really want to drive is that, first off, you are understanding what are the existing processes in place. I like to work or look at it in people process technology. I like to get an understanding of what are the existing people, the teams. It may not be a formal customer success team. In a new startup, it means that maybe sales is doing some portion of customer success. But I want to understand who are the existing people that is currently servicing your end customers. I need to understand process. Is there any kind of process in place? What has been done so far? What are the challenges? What are the gaps? I want to understand that early on before jumping into anything. And then technology, what are the tools that you have in place, etc. Like what have the organization has invested in. So I like to get a lay of the ground in the first 30 days. And in some instances, that could mean I'm meeting the new team. And then I'm getting to know the processes, etc., like I mentioned. And so that's one aspect of the first 30 days. But there's a lot of getting to know that happens in the first 30 days. So as I mentioned, getting to know the people, process, technology in place, understanding the company goals. What is the charter of customer success in this organization? Is there a charter? Just to understand what I can work with and what I have to work with. I need to understand the lay of the land. Who are the other teams? I like to meet the product team, support team, if that's something that exists or something different. I like to meet the sales team, the marketing team. So meeting the existing team, the cross-functional teams that collectively makes up the organization. And so, like I said, a lot of getting to know. I want, if possible, to also start meeting customers already in your first 30 days. You understand who are the existing customers, maybe do a listening tour, just join calls of your sales team or any existing client-facing teams that you have. And the end goal of that first 30 days is that I'm getting to know what's happening, the lay of the land, as I mentioned, so that I can create an immediate impact. You want to deliver a quick win by the first 30 days. Like, what is something that you have identified that you can easily resolve, a low-hanging fruit, basically. So for the first 30 days, there's 4 weeks in that. So that's a lot to do in the first 30 days.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And then 30, 90 days is when I actually start to work on my analysis, on gap analysis, improvement analysis, opportunity analysis to understand what should we do? How do we plan this? If that is, I have to build everything from scratch based on what I learned from the customers, from the cross-functional team, and the existing team that is servicing the customer. I need to draft like an initial understanding of, okay, what are the things I need to focus on? If that means I'm inheriting an existing team, I need to understand what was wrong or what was the challenge that they're having, and start to come up with my plan that I will deliver, let's say, for the first year that I'm in the company. So the first 30 days is getting the lay of the land. Second 30 days, so basically 30 to 60 days, is understanding, coming up with a plan. And really 60 to 90 days is when you lay the groundwork for your plan. You like to start on the foundational aspects of your plan so that you build on top of that as you continue, throughout your stay in the company. So yeah, I did a long-winded answer there, but at the crux of it, it's getting the lay of the land at the beginning, understand existing team, cross-functional team goals, any processes and tools in place to be able to deliver a quick win in the first 30 days, the first month, and then follow that up with your analysis, create a plan, and start executing on the plan on the third month.
Oh, I think that this is like something that every leader will struggle with, because as a CS person, you want to help. That's just kind of the nature of the game. You want to jump in, you want to help, whether it's helping your team, helping your customers, helping. It just happens to be the nature of the type of people that do this role. But I think if I look back and I wanted to redo my first 100 days, I would always spend time with the customer. I think the customer will tell you almost anything and everything you need to know before anyone at an organization can, meaning they will tell you about the products, the good, the bad, the ugly. They will tell you about the team, the good, the bad, the ugly. They will tell you about the industry, the good, the bad, the ugly. They will talk you through their experience of working with your product and service. So I would spend a lot of time with customers on calls, as many as you can, by the way. I'm still, as a leader, I actually actively spend time on calls with customers, not just escalations, but actively having partnership discussions. That's the first thing I would do, is reprioritize that. I think another thing that I would really make sure I do in the first 100 days is understand your stakeholders. As a leader, but especially in customer success, there are multiple stakeholders and multiple people within the business that you report both directly and indirectly to, meaning stakeholders might be the board, meaning like you own a revenue number, or it might be just the wider leadership team that are looking for certain KPIs that you need to hit, or it might be other people in other like parts of the business that are like, well, if CS leader is here, they need help with case studies. A marketing person's probably going to come to you for that. Or they need to help us develop a better roadmap. Product person's going to come to you for that. You have multiple stakeholders in a business, and you need to really understand who those people are and what they're kind of expecting out of customer success. And then the third and final thing, and it's not third because it's lowest on the list, it's just listing everything, but it's really getting to know your team and the people that are working for you. I know sometimes when you step into leadership, you don't have a team yet. You might hire it out yourself, which is great. You get to pick who works on a team. But sometimes when you step into a role, you don't necessarily get to pick that team. They're already there. And I would say that as a leader, you are like there to enable your team to succeed, because the more successful they are, the more successful customers are, and the company is, and ultimately yourself. And I think getting to know your team and what they're working on, what they're striving towards, their pain points, their struggles, I think getting to know all of those pieces is only going to make you a stronger leader, and making sure that when you step into the next 100 days, you really have a strong foundation and a strong team that's able to support the vision that you're going to come in and do with customer success.
Yeah, you know what? I good question, and I've done this a few times. 5 years was my longest tenure. I've had some shorter tenures, jumping around. So I've done the 100-day sprints a couple of times now, and for me, the one thing that I would really kind of zoom in on is the fact that you never get those 100 days back in the eyes of your customers. Right. So, the classic listening tour, you can't do that when you're part of the furniture 6 months into the organization. You can only do that on day 1 to 100. So the first thing that I did at my previous company and also at Nezasa is I got on the road, got on an airplane, introduced myself to our customers, sent the marketing email out saying, hey, here's who I am. Here's why I'm here. I used my email address and basically told them to reply to me directly if there's any challenges. And then the stuff really kind of came out of the woodwork, so to speak. And that was really helpful because it gave new momentum to customers who maybe were just frustrated and were going to churn, but they felt like they had a bit of a lifeline. And it also helped kind of inform the CX strategy. So the first 30 days, if I break it down, first 30 days, nothing internal. It's all listening to customers, going out there and being on the road and gathering your own opinions. The next 30 days, speaking with your internal team and kind of understanding how things work internally, where the friction points are. And then that final 30 days in the 90 is really kind of formulating plans and your next kind of 12 to 24 month roadmap based on the external and then the internal feedback that you got for those first 60 days, if that makes sense.
Yeah. We actually kind of programmatically have like a post-hire program where we guide new leaders through their first quarter or two, right? We want to ensure that they're successful in seat. So the advice that I would give them and anyone else listening is, first and foremost, make sure that you truly understand the business and familiarize yourself with the board, their communication preferences, and their priorities. And your CEO should be able to help you. And, operate like a consultant. Be curious. Run your own discovery process and assessment to validate what you've heard through the interviews or what you're hearing, the first few weeks, so that you can either, challenge or, kind of continue on the path of validating. And you can prepare like a formal readout with clear findings and recommendations for your executive team and your direct reports and your peers. And I think doing that allows you to build trust, build credibility, come in with like a very impartial, objective read on the business and get the buy-in that you need to be successful. I also highly recommend that leaders in that first quarter or two, first 100 days, meet with as many customers, partners, and teams as you can, and maybe set a target or a goal. And that way you can kind of be disciplined about how you manage your calendar. Otherwise, folks are going to usurp your calendar very quickly. And this may be counterintuitive, but review as many support cases as you can, right? Support cases tend to have archives that are incredibly rich and valuable. And so I would highly recommend spending a little bit of time there. I personally, every time I started a new CS role, would review at least 50 to 100 cases in the first few weeks, right? And if you want to challenge yourself, try to solve for them. And that way you get a sense for how the current process works, who you might need to ask and leverage, and the tools and systems that support the team today and whether they're meeting their goals. I don't think you can be a true customer leader if you don't become a user of your product from day one. I've made the mistake of assuming that my goal was primarily management, and that didn't really help me build kind of the connective tissue with customers and with my team. So important to actually carve out the time, protect your calendar to learn how to actually use the applications that you're going to be, supporting. And then finally, first team connections are really, really important. So, you want to have your marketing, product, engineering, and sales peers on your side, right? There is no customer success without the entire company kind of behind that mission. It's not a single department, even though you might have an executive with customer success in their title. It doesn't mean that all of that falls on their shoulders. So, understand what your peers are worried about, concerned about, what's keeping them up at night, and figure out how you can help them get more sleep.
An important thing to do is, of course, get the lay of the land and understand where you're at. A lot of it has to do with the customer base itself, then understanding the needs of those customers, maybe understanding if there was, what type of issues might have been there first, if there's a churn issue or what you're finding the onboarding situation is like too. So kind of understanding exactly where a company is at in terms of who their customers are, the makeup of them, what their needs are, and of course, growth plans and plans for the company. So that way you can better understand, well, where are we marching towards? What's sort of the expectations, the revenue goals, the expansion goals that you're looking for, and then those pain points as well. So a lot of that can be done with something like, journey mapping. So then you understand as a customer comes in, buys this product, moves through the product, they can understand a little bit more about who they are, what kind of person they are, and what the needs might be. And so with that in mind as a starting point, and then understanding what processes were in place, what tools have been used thus far, well, then you can kind of gauge, well, what direction do we want to head? What area there are adjustments or improvements that we could find and start building from there.
Yeah. So really get your hands dirty, get into the details. Don't be afraid to develop points of view and test them out. So often people are given the advice that, you just go collect insight for the first 90 days. Mostly companies aren't looking for you to sit around and think about things for 90 days.
That's so true.
You'll go back 2 hours before somebody asks your opinion, and it's okay to be wrong. But what you want to do is make that a really natural process where you're gathering insights, developing points of view, sharing them so that people can help poke holes in your knowledge or exposure. And that gives you more context. So then you can make better decisions with the team. It also gets the team really involved and getting to know you and how you think. So I would say hit the ground running. Don't be afraid to come up with points of view and share them, but be open-minded. Know that you'll be collecting context for way more than that first 100 days. And if you approach it from that perspective, you empower everyone around you to support you in making the right decisions, and you make good decisions together that help you do what you came there to do.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, do you find that looking at like a lot of companies have CS and CX data already there, NBS or CSAC? Do you find looking at that historical data once you get into a position is beneficial, or do you feel like you don't know how the test is run, you're not sure about it?
No, it doesn't matter how it was run. You should be asking those questions.
Okay, good.
I actually ask for a litany of information. Once I accept a role, I have a whole list of things that I want to get my hands on to study so I can start to develop a current state assessment and kind of understand the history. It also empowers me to ask good questions, like why did we do it this way? What was compelling? What worked? What didn't? A lot of times what happens when you come into a new role, you come in with all these great, exciting experiences that have worked well for you in the past. I'm not a believer of lift and shift playbooks. I am a believer in understanding the context that applies and using the best of what you've done before to apply to apply in the right ways in this situation. So I'm looking at NPS and CX data, but I'm also looking at business performance data, what our go-to-market is, what are our win rates in which markets, what is our ICP. I want to look at all of that, as well as team dynamics, because it just gives me a richer perspective on where we've been. and makes it possible for me to really hit the ground running with really good questions for my team and my peers in the business.
The very first thing is you can't. We all have our toolkits we join, but they're your principles. They're not your solutions. So I would never embark on here's how we need to fix things without doing two things: sitting alongside people that interact with customers every day. If that's in a contact center, if that's a guy delivering a parcel, it's a guy in a retail store, or lady, of course. Guy means man or woman in this context. I want to be with them and understand the pain they go through when they always have the answers in their head, and you can see the things that frustrate them cause customer experience friction. So, oh, I hate this. We never have the empowerment to do this. Or I never have a solution for this question. And I'll say, why is that? And they'll say, oh, we don't have the information or the systems or the processes to fix it. So as soon as I know the problems from their perspective, I'll then walk in the customer's shoes in every one of those situations I saw in the employee's shoes. And you put the two together, there's nearly always a list of 5 to 10 of the bleeding obvious things that are bad for the company and the business and the brand that nobody has ever actually written down or thought to try and fix. So after 100 days, usually a lot faster, it's usually pretty obvious what are the big things that are preventing the business from being as good as it can be. And then with my experience, I'll think about how's the best way to persuade the board, the executives, that they're important to them. You have to turn it into a business case. You can't just say customers are unhappy and then think about what are the ways to fix it. And then after 100 days, I nearly always like to have what I call my North Star vision. Okay, we're a bank, we're a utility, we're a telco, we're okay, but here's how we want to be better than okay. And that vision turns into the thing that fixes all the issues I've observed from the employees or the customers, but also gives a reason for the board to think, okay, that's what we should back this guy. And it sounds easy, but it's never easy. And the one lesson I've learned is never come in, as I said at the start, here's my toolkit, here's what worked before. You've always got to start again from scratch.
Yeah, sure. I think it's actually about being pretty selfish with your time. I just remember when I joined about everyone really wanting a bit of you and a part of you and to get involved in everything from day one. And that can be really overwhelming. So for me, it was actually, and I wish I probably learned a bit more about this at the start, but actually just making sure you have that time in your diary for you to absorb, because you're getting so much information in those first 100 days. And you actually need to be able to take that step back and actually think about how you're going to action it and, either implement change or improve upon it. So I think, just sort of being really mindful of your own time, at the same time as obviously wanting to engage and get to know the business. The first couple of things I did as well was really looking at like where the business was and any quick wins we could make in the team. There had been quite a bit of change in the teams that I took on. So we were able to identify a couple of projects that had been sat for a little while and just needed someone really to kind of give the green light to go ahead. So we did a couple of things such as helping the team to implement out-of-hours support with a third party. That was something that a lot of thinking had been done around, but we hadn't actually got it into practice. Also identified the fact that our onboarding process was a little bit manual, a little bit back and forth, so we did some streamlining of that. So not huge strategic objectives, but actually things that helped along the way. And then also for us as well, it was about thinking, where are the customers? What can I learn from our customers? So where can I actually grow upon the existing relationships I have? So I already knew quite a lot of these customers. I already worked with quite a lot of them before. So it was about looking at the customer base, re-engaging, trying to improve or kind of grow some of those relationships, but also looking at where we had any risk as well and trying to kind of get some things back on track. I think importantly, it was actually just making sure you would take a step back every now and again and not just get too involved in the day-to-day BAU from day one, which is actually quite hard to do when you get drawn into things.
I'm sure different people do it differently. I am number one, and maybe this is coming from a contact center person, but I start by listening. I want to sit down. I want to even maybe take some of that frontline training, at least read through it, watch some of the, training videos and stuff like that to understand from our team's perspective that are interacting direct with customers. I want to hear from that team as well and understand their pain points. I want to, I want to hear some of the really juicy calls and read emails from customers and understand. Not only I think that's the best way for me to understand the product, understand our processes, and then understand pain points, and then really I can work on helping to figure out which are the big pain points that we need to solve. Work on building bridges with all, we talk in CX a lot about silos, building bridges to all those different silos and getting us all working together toward a common mission. And, I hope that I'm at a company that has a great mission. We have a great mission at Number Barn, and certainly that comes from the top. And that's something that if we have that mission we're all working toward, then the CX people can really get everybody working toward that mission. So that's really where my focus is in those first 100 days.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think that time is so precious and so important that it's used so wisely. So my best advice would be to know the business first and foremost. So who is it you're working for? What is it they do? What is their vision? What's their strategy? What's their core values? Really try and understand that part of the business, because that will prove to be a really important thing to you in the future when you come to design your own DX strategies and when you try and get initiatives, buy-ins for initiatives. So if you can understand where the company wants to go, what their strategies are, and their core values, you can align to that, and it just helps to really kind of get the buy-in. So I think understanding that element of the business is really important. But equally, like all the processes, the product, how everything works and fits together is super important, because obviously a big part of your role will be understanding the customer and being able to map out their journey. So understanding that process side of it is really important as well. So I would definitely say understanding all those business elements, and in addition to that, the people that work at the company, really getting to know the people around you, because particularly in the company I'm in, it's a really large company, so there's so many layers and so many people with so many skills. So I think having time to kind of get to know those people, network with them, is really important, because you'll need to leverage their skills as well as part of your work. Apart from being fun, I think it's really important that we are able to utilize people around us and their knowledge. So I think that's also really important. So all of those business elements, but also then aside from that, really get to know your audience, your customers. Who are you designing experiences for? So find out as much as you can about them from what you have available to you at the time. So who are they? What products are they interacting with? How are they interacting with them? So gather as much research and data as you possibly can. Data is really important to me in my job. So I always feel like I can't do anything without it, because it just gives you a really clear picture of where those pain points are for your customers, and also where the opportunities are to improve the service that we provide and how we deliver those experiences to our customers. So I think trying to understand that side of it, the data around our customers, is super important. To know the business, know your customer, and I spend a good bit of time doing that. And then once you have that, obviously get your plan together for yourself and your department, CX strategy and the operational models and the frameworks that you're going to work off of, and just be really clear on all of that and how you're going to implement that, so that you can get people excited, get them bought into it, and it will make your job so much easier.
So my take is there are 3 areas that any CS lead or a CS head needs to look at. Number 1 is you need to know your product. You need to understand what your product really does, how it impacts your customer, and understand the customer experience as a person who plays around with your product, because that is the fundamental place where you'd want to get started, so that you know what your customers are experiencing in general. The second one is to know your people. You've got a team that is executing something, right? When you are stepping into the shoes of a new team, it's important to understand what your team is delivering, how are they being measured more than anything else, and what are the kind of experiences they are delivering to your customers. And the third one I would say is to know your customers ultimately. Your customers are the backbone of your business, right? Because they are the folks who are actually using your product. They're going to be giving you feedback that is so valuable to change things in your organization. So it's important to understand your customers better. And sometimes even spend some time with your top customers or your strategic customers to understand their challenges that they face on a daily basis, and understand how your product is actually solving those challenges. Because once you understand how your customers are, number one, using your product and engaging with your teams, you get a sense of what you can do better with them. And if you're spending time with strategic customers to do these kind of activities, you're actually kind of setting up for success, right? And ensuring that you are able to secure renewals with them, for example, or even have further increase the kind of the way you would engage with the customer to move them from just being a customer to an advocate for your product at the end of it. So
That makes a ton
yes, I
of
think it's
sense.
about
Yeah.
knowing your product, knowing your people, and knowing your customers. I would go with that theme in general as what you would do in your first 100 days as a CS leader.
Well, the first thing to do is definitely not buy a technology, because you need to get an appreciation and a grounding for how things are working already. You already have a built-in group of people who are managing customers just by definition. Who's taking the orders, who's putting the messages out there, who's creating the value proposition, who's deciding who to target, who's delivering the value. So you have built-in customer management already, and you need to be giving credit where credit's due and making allies with all of those people. Not necessarily that they need to report to you, but you need to be harnessing what they're bringing to the party, and also influencing them to be consistent across the end-to-end journey and customer life cycles. So that's the first thing I want to do, is understand who's doing what. Second, I want to understand where the money is going. Costs. What kind of wasted costs are there? What kind of duplicated effort? What about the various sources of revenue and so forth? So I like to pay attention to that, because everybody wants more revenue, but it's not personal. Budget is personal. So when I can talk intelligently about costs and the opportunity that it brings to potentially more salary increases, profit sharing, hiring, and budget, because we're squandering less, well, then that becomes a hook. So I'm trying to look for things that I can hook into in the culture, in the way that things are already happening, the routines that people do, and what's important to each group. Because as a customer experience leader, it's not necessarily about what you're doing to customers. It's what you're bringing together as an entire company to do for customers. And that's how you get the value from customers.
Yeah, I think connecting with your team is most important. You're going to inherit a team for the most part that's going to have a lot of experience with the processes and procedures. And what I always try to do is leverage their experience rather than trying to create something from scratch. So really getting close to the team is one of the things that I focus on early. Then after that, getting and building a strong relationship with your product team. Because no CX program is going to be strong unless you have the ear of the product team in order to influence that roadmap. I almost look at it as a relay race. You get the information from the customer, that customer facing information packages it up, and then hands it over to the product and engineering team for execution and improvements. So, I really try to stay laser focused on building the relationships with my internal team, number one, to leverage their expertise and their knowledge, and then also building the internal relationships with the product and engineering team to try to influence the roadmap.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the first thing is I'm not a big reactor. So I think a pause is really in order. And the biggest thing that we did when we were looking at kind of transforming into CX is take that pause and really do an assessment. So you really need to find out where you are as a company and where you want to go. There were a couple of maturity models that we actually adopted. So we used the help of MCorp CX and IBM iX to really kind of take a look and assess what we were trying to do, where we were trying to go. And we identified kind of a structure and a methodology that we wanted to follow to really try to help create the kind of transformation we were looking to do. So the areas that we looked at were kind of strategy, customer understanding, design and innovation, measurement, tech stack, business procedures, and culture. And so we really dove into each of those categories to take a look at how we wanted to transform, what we were willing to invest and commit to, and then we aligned our budgets accordingly.
Yeah. I'll say, right from the beginning, and I'll go back a little bit if you don't mind, but right from the beginning, when you start out entry level in customer experience or customer service, you don't understand the opportunity that's in front of you, right? You are the voice of the customer, whether or not you're being paid to be the voice of the customer, right? You know what works, what doesn't work, which departments work well together and which don't. And you should appreciate all of that knowledge that you have and use that to grow in your career, use that to grow within the company. I feel like lots of times we just think customer service as entry level, inconsequential, but that is not true. You are the source of knowledge and should leverage that knowledge for your next role or your next opportunity. That's what I did. And I was lucky enough, like who knew I could make a lifelong career in customer service, but I have by doing those things, sharing what I knew about the customer experience and just accepting new challenges and moving on. So now I'm a leader. I know how it all starts. I'm able to set strategic priorities for our employees and for our customers, all through just listening to the customers and sharing throughout the organization what they're telling us.
When you first stepped into the role, did you guys have any data in place, or did you have any other resources you looked into to gather information before you set your plan?
Here we did not have that. I have the pleasure of being the first leader of a customer experience department here. We've had customer service, but never a strategic role in customer experience. So what we started out with first, which is something that I support and have supported throughout my career, is Net Promoter Score. So we started to dig into what our score was, but more importantly, what our customers were telling us about why they gave us that rating. And we started to understand what improvements or opportunities there were with our support, with our product, with any other processes that we had in place. So that was our starting point. And from there, we've just uncovered a lot of different areas to explore.